Welcome once again to the One Speed MMA podcast with _W and Flying Smitty here.
That's us.
Find us on Twitter, of course, as always. We got big news on Twitter this week. We got 520 followers.
Yes.
Yeah.
We appreciate everybody that ends up listening to this that's on it. We got some good feedback from some people. We appreciate positive feedback as well. If there's things that you would like to hear from us, for the most part, we're just giving our analysis and our projections and things like that. But if there's things that you'd like to see, we'd like to hear about it. Tweet at us. You know where to find us already because you communicated with us on Twitter. We appreciate it.
Always a good time to talk MMA on Twitter. We got to talk a lot about this weekend's fights. What did you think about the card overall?
I mean, it was good. It wasn't the strongest Fox card, you know. But between that and Bellator the day before, there's a lot of finishes. There wasn't too much stuff going to decision. It wasn't as ambiguous judging as some of the previous cards. So I liked that. How did you feel about it?
I liked it. We tried to live cast, as you know, and that made it a little bit more difficult. I felt like it's a little bit more enjoyable when you are being able to just watch the fights rather than to live cast it. So it seemed, even though I really enjoyed it, it still seemed like it was a little bit difficult to really get into it, especially because some of the fights were not. They didn't seem like they were that spectacular until we watched them, and then they ended up being a pretty good time. So let's start reviewing that. What was the most memorable fight? The one that you remember right off the top of your head from this last weekend?
Right off the top of my head, it was Bader and Rumble.
Which went exactly like everyone thought it would.
Yeah. Well, and that's maybe why it was the most memorable, because that's the only one that I picked right. So...
Big news before we get into that one. Well, obviously we can talk about that one quickly. On the last podcast, we talked about if Ryan Bader could get out of the first round, he'd have a chance. If he could make it through the first probably minute, he might have a decent chance. And of course, he decided to shoot right off the bat, and good old Rumble used his jiu-jitsu to take his back, roll him, even after Kimura defense got him against the fence and bashed him out. So,
he had to do something, and he couldn't just sit there on his feet. He maybe should have set up his takedown a little bit more.
He should have gave a little bit more credit to Johnson.
Yeah, and I think that, it's very easily to be an armchair analyst, right? Yeah. But yes. As everybody always says, but I think that if maybe he would have used like movement more to get away from Johnson and stuff like that, wear him out a little bit. And I'm not even saying like use your punches to set up the takedown, but even just wearing Johnson out, which takes like 35 seconds. Getting him a little bit worn out so that you could set up the takedown, I think would have helped. Well,
apparently he said that his game plan originally was to stick and move. And then he ended up getting into the cage and he didn't stick to his own game plan. He just immediately shot. And so, I don't know what it was, either, jitters, or they were worried about his right hand, or he thought his wrestling might be better. Like, obviously none of us know. We aren't him. We can't really, get into his mindset. And he hasn't really talked about it since, other than the fact that he said that he didn't go according to his own game plan. Well, but that seems to be the same, but everyone says.
Well, yeah. And, we had some comments on Twitter about, and this was super interesting to me. And I didn't think that if I would have looked it up and I was like, hey, if you had to put money on like the top 5 people that don't get hit in the UFC, I'd say Dominic Cruz, and probably pull out some other Lyoto Machida, Anderson Silva. Really, Chris Weidman didn't really get hit very often before this Rockhold fight. I would have said some names like that. I would not have said Ryan Bader. And so I was really surprised at hearing about how he is one of the UFC's top, or I guess, how would you phrase that? The
avoiders,
the best,
the least struck, the best at avoiding strikes.
At the same time, it's very hard to avoid strikes from that position, though. That definitely couldn't have been in his game plan.
When someone's on your back and has you flattened out, good luck. Well, it's interesting how much he tried to hit him with his right hand, and then as soon as that left came in, he was donezo. His body just went limp, and that was pretty nutty. Might as well just go right down the line. Barnett, Rothwell. I thought Rothwell looked like a dead body, like they had weekended Bernied him. I actually made that comment during our live cast that he was so white and looked so slow that it looked like he was a marionette doll that someone was posing out there in the middle of the ring.
Yeah, man. Like it, and that just overall like wasn't an exciting fight at all. Like it was, and those are top 5 fighters. Like those are, I mean, except for, I mean, you could
Karson
probably
hates
say
the heavyweights. Let's before we even start this, let's get into that. Why do you hate heavyweights?
Because they're not fun to watch.
And why not?
And who's my favorite fighter?
Cain Velasquez.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it's not like I have a prejudice against heavyweights, but I mean, for the vast majority, they're not fun to watch, especially 5 rounders, which this one wasn't. Fair enough, but I'm just saying, technically, I cannot for the life of me. Do you remember that Denver card that was all heavyweights? It was in a May. It was Austin's birthday, and it was like Roy Nelson headlined it. Worst card ever.
Next week. That's mostly heavyweights next week. I mean, you've got, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but Roy Nelson versus Rosholt, or however it's pronounced. Rosholt is how I always say it. I believe there's another heavyweight. Yeah, I think there's 2 or 3 heavyweight fights on the next card, and I think they did that because they tried to wait a bit for knockouts. But those heavyweights, there's very few that actually do the heavyweight or the stand and brawl anymore.
Well,
heavyweight.
I think they do a lot of that stuff too, because if we would have had Cain versus Verdum, you need to have the picture start fleshing itself out for the next fight too. You have to start getting narrative for that. So I understand why they do that.
Who's next? Who could come out? So who is next?
Stipe.
You think you don't do Stipe Rothwell for a number 1?
No. I mean, were you convinced by Rothwell?
No way.
No.
Do I think the same as Mark Hunt? Everyone was like, hey, Mark Hunt's beat all of these people. He deserves a title shot. And they said if he gets back past JDS, he'll get a title shot. And then he didn't get past JDS. And so, I mean, it is what it is. But at the same time, if you've got a 4-fight winning streak in the heavyweight division, which means really nothing.
Actually, I think any streak in the heavyweight division means something. And maybe that's part of it, is because they hit so hard. They're such big hitters that it's so easy to lose. That's why we don't have anybody coming out as a clear contender, because, I mean, they hit hard, and I understand that. Like, it's not like...
But let's think about it. I mean, when you get together, when you get Mark Hunt and you get Ben Rothwell and you get those guys that can just take a whole bunch of punches, they just tire each other out. I mean, Bigfoot Silva, a lot of those guys are going to decision. And so it's not necessarily that they're knocking each other out. Some of those guys are so big and so tough that there's almost no chance of them actually getting knocked out. And then they just go into decisions and all kinds of different stuff. I mean, it's a difficult thing to think, because the top 5, it is a whole bunch of knockouts. JDS, Cain, Verdum, Mark Hunt, most of those people are going to get knocked, or are going to have knockouts. Ben Rothwell, I guess, it is what it is. It's either a knockout or the world's worst thing in the entire world.
As far as who's going to be, who I think could have actually, sorry if this is kind of backtracking, we had to deal with the dog, but I would say Stipe. And I would say as early as make him and the Verdum, because Verdum's good in, what, they said 4 weeks?
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, I think he's good whenever he wants to be, but I think he's taking 4 weeks just because, so it doesn't look as bad if he just rushes back into another fight. Mm-hmm. And like I said, Cain most likely won't get another. I guess, yeah, if Stipe's ready, they're probably doing 4 weeks for Stipe, so he doesn't just have to, he actually gets more or less a full camp.
Do Cain Rothwell too?
No, I guess Cain Rothwell, that does make sense. No, because Cain's going to be out far longer than Verdum.
But not that much longer. You know, Rothwell's coming off of a fight. And one thing I want to talk to you about on this, did you hear that, he's, hiding the technique that he used for that choke, that it wasn't a typical choke? It was called
the go-go choke.
Was that all? That's what all it was?
Yeah. So apparently he calls it the go-go choke, and there's about 1 million other chokes for it, but it's something that he's done for a while. Apparently he's used it a couple times, and there's only a couple people to teach it. And there was, and I can't remember exactly what coach it was, but they actually called him afterwards and were like, hey, come down and teach our guys that choke. And so he's super proud about it. The one thing I really liked, I watched a lot of the post-fight conferences and different things, and a lot of what he actually talked about was his wife, and how helpful she is. And he's like, a lot of fighters' wives and girlfriends cause a lot of issues in their lives and can actually be the downfall of a fighter. And he's like, she definitely helps me with everything I need. And since he already looks like he's a stay-at-home dad that works in software. It definitely is nice to hear someone say good things about their wife.
Did you watch the post-fight press conference too?
I did, yes.
I also appreciated what Rumble said, where they were like, "You gonna wait for a title fight?" And he's like, "No, man." Or they said, "Would you take another shot or another fight?" And he goes, "Absolutely, it's a paycheck." So I mean, I think that's what he needs to do. I mean, make sure that there's no doubt that you're the next in line.
Well, and Rothwell said he wanted to clear the division. He said he wanted to fight Cain Velasquez so he could get
redemption on that.
He could get redemption on that one, and so that he could also beat who obviously he thinks is the hardest person, the most difficult person to actually fight in that division. Like, yeah, he wants a title fight and whatever, but he said he wanted to clear it. I think he's partly saying that because he knows he's not going to get the next title fight. I think he knows logically, he's a smart guy. If he keeps saying title fight, he's not going to actually get it, and it's not worth his time. It's better for him to actually just take a fight, get the money, and get the big money fight.
Mm-hmm. And I think, if he comes out and fights Cain Velasquez, I don't even care if it's ring rust Cain Velasquez, and he beats him. I mean, I got to eat crow all day on that, because I don't think he can. I don't think he could beat Travis Brown. I don't think he could beat Cain Dos Santos.
Two people that think he could beat Cain Velasquez.
Him and his wife.
His wife, and his coach. So 3.
I doubt his coach even thinks that. I think he keeps blowing his coach's mind. I don't know, man.
I don't know what he's doing.
We come up with a game plan and he does it. But I didn't think it was going to happen.
I didn't teach him the go-go choke. Yeah, no, I don't think. The fact is you beat over him. He beat Silva. He beat, Hunt, I believe Hunt beat him wrestling, right? No, he beat Hunt wrestling.
Has Hunt ever beat anybody wrestling?
No. But the thing is, give him one more fight, give him a title shot. Why not?
Yeah, who else are you going to put in the division?
You don't lose anything. Put it on a...
That division needs to just start doing free cards.
Put it on a Fox.
Yeah, because first off, they've kind of went away from this, which is really good. But the whole heaviest weight class is the one that headlines. Does not fly for the heavyweight division unless it's the top 3. Verdum, Cain, and Dos Santos fighting each other. Overeem before could help sell a card, but nobody else in that division is a draw.
Yeah, and I agree. You can throw them on a card to give it a little bit more depth, but they're definitely not a draw by any means.
Headline a free card all day.
Yeah.
They could do the same thing that the 135s do. But they're just not. They're not a draw for me, anyways. And I think that's why they keep putting them on free cards.
So the other big fight name on this card was Sage Northcutt. What do you think about that fight?
I thought he actually strung some things together that were pretty good in the first round early. And then Barberena got some confidence and realized that he wasn't quite what the UFC was billing him as. And that's why I feel like...
Did you see his interview with Ariel Helwani?
Barberena or Northcutt?
Northcutt.
What did he say?
So 2 things. I really like this kid, actually. He went to the hospital, so he wasn't there. But, he actually... Instead of pulling a Ronda Rousey or anything else, he kind of did a Paige Van Zandt and was there. He lost. He came out. He's speaking with everybody. He's on Twitter. He didn't just disappear. Apparently, he had strep throat. However, there's 2 different things to the story. Apparently, he had strep throat. He went to the doctor 2 days before. He was on antibiotics. But secondly, there's actually a play-by-play with a BJJ coach that actually walks through how he got submitted. And he wasn't looking for an arm triangle. What he was actually doing was pulling a type of an arm triangle, but he was also shoving his shoulder into the carotid on the one side and then pulling the arm up on the other. So it's a way to actually choke people out. It actually showed, he went through the technique and was like, you know what? A lot of people didn't see his hands are, even though he's in half guard, his hands are connected on the other side. And the shoulder that he's pushing down in, he's not trying to get position. He's literally using that position to shut off one side of his carotid and the other. And so there's...
Well, Barberena also said that he could submit quite a few people with it. Yeah. So it's not... Because that was the one thing, is like, dude, he just did that from half. Like...
And the thing that they were saying is they had it for about 8 seconds, and then they went to the other side for 2 seconds. So he had that in for about 10 seconds, and they say it's about an average of from 8 to 10 seconds for someone to tap or to potentially even lose consciousness if something's deep enough. Sage Northcutt has come out. It would have been interesting if he would have waited, and instead of saying he was sick, let the BJJ coaches and people come out and actually say, no, this is how he was submitted.
Yeah,
not, I couldn't breathe out of my mouth.
Nobody likes to hear
excuses.
No, like, you're not winning fans being like, hey, I had strep throat. The fans that you have,
They ate him alive on Twitter.
I know. But like the fans that you have, they'll use it as an excuse, but you don't win any fans that way.
No, I don't mean after the fight. I mean for the strep throat comment. They ate him alive.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. No, I mean,
it's fine. Like, if somebody
bad.
asks you, answer the question. I don't know the context in that particular scenario. If somebody was like, hey, you didn't look 100% like we've seen you in the last fights. Is something wrong? Like,
he kind of jumped straight to it in the
interview.
Did he? Yep.
Okay.
And
I was going to say, because if they also were like saying something like, hey, we heard from your camp that this was happening before, or Dana said and you still took the fight, that actually turns out to be kind of respectable. Because we've heard other people say, is this true? And you ended up taking the fight?
The hardest part about that is Ariel Helwani invited him on, and Ariel Helwani who's a class act, and the more I listen to him, the more I like him. At the end of his podcast, or the end of the MMA hour, he was like, you know what, I asked Sage these questions. He didn't just come out and say it. Like, I asked him, it just isn't one of those things that he, wasn't more of an excuse. And then I watched the beginning of the interview, and he was like, hey, Ariel, he asked him about the fight and everything. He's like, yeah, I just wanted to clear up some things. I had strep throat all week. I'd been on antibiotics. I went into the doctor 2 days before. We were on the phone with USADA, calling in and making sure everything was, kosher that we were doing, and that we didn't take anything that was, against the rules. But he jumped straight into it himself. Like, he was like, and yes, I had strep throat. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like hey, were you sick? Well, what happened?
Maybe,
what was it?
If it comes out that he was taking other stuff, because I've seen people even get like put under a microscope for taking different antibiotics and things like that. So maybe if he's getting in front, because he gets accused so much of doing steroids.
Yeah, maybe that is what it is. Maybe it's got a whole different goal to it.
You just don't know. As far as people crucifying him, being like, he is not the UFC's golden boy, like, he's not the one that said that, by the way. He's kind of played it up a little bit.
I like the kid.
He's just a 19-year-old kid, man, that's trying to, he's in a young sport. There's not really a precedent for kids that young getting into it so much, especially with as much hype as he has. You got to give him a little bit of slack. I'm not saying I'm a fan of him, or I love him, or I'm sold on him, or anything like that, but give him. I also don't think he's the savior of MMA. He's not gonna shoot it into the stratosphere. He's got to play it out a little bit. He's not that.
One of the most interesting things about that I heard, obviously rumors passed on, was that he went up to TriStar originally up with Roy McDonald and George St. Pierre, and he ended up leaving because they were training too hard for him. He didn't actually want to train as hard as they were training. He was getting a little beat up, and so he decided to leave because it was too much. The reason I didn't necessarily believe that rumor is because now he's supposed to be heading back up to TriStar to train full time, which I think is a great camp for him to be in. Obviously he's like the obviously we've got not Josh Thompson. We've got Stephen Thompson on this weekend's card, who's a karate guy. Had a whole bunch of stuff. He has some issues with his wrestling as well. But TriStar is a great place for him to be with GSP and Rory McDonald and those guys. OSP up there. Those guys have some pretty solid wrestling, and so it's definitely going to be a place that he'll be able to train and do well as long as he actually starts sparring and some of those things.
Overall, how did you feel about the card? I guess the one thing that we missed was the Yuri Alcantara. Did you? I feel like Yuri it went really fast.
Alcantara was boring, but I like that Jamie Rivera, I believe that's his first name. I like that he won, and I like the story that he brings. He's only got one loss, and I think he's got 2 or 3 wins in the UFC. And Yuri Alcantara, who's definitely a gatekeeper, who's gone 3 rounds with Uriah Faber in the last 2 years. It's definitely exciting to see some fresh blood. I think they need to hold him a little bit and let him train a little bit more before they throw him in against the top 3. The Mendez is.
Oh, he even said it himself. He wants a top 10.
Yeah, I don't think top 5, top 10 definitely. So I like him. His fight was a little bit boring, but I don't think that was on him. I think he did a lot of the pressing. He did get caught once and then he took him down to make sure he didn't get too shaken up, but I think he did well. Biggest disappointment of the night was definitely Jake Ellenberger, Tarek Safardine, which I don't believe you saw.
I didn't.
It was a pretty boring fight. Ellenberger obviously relying too much on his overhand right, and Tarek Safardine just doing what it took to get the win. And even Tarek during his post-fight wasn't necessarily happy with himself.
I'm going to have to go back and watch that one because maybe they don't really show prelims on FS1. I don't know. But I'm sure it's online.
It'll be on Fight Pass.
I don't have it. But in some other news, if we're done with that card.
Yeah.
So do you follow any of the fighters that do Twitch?
Yeah.
Did you see
Demetrius Johnson?
Did you see that?
I did. And it's
hilarious.
even interesting. It's even more interesting because I was watching his UFC 2 stream the day before, and then I didn't watch the next one. But explain a little bit what happened.
So if you're not familiar with Twitch is a gaming service that you can watch people play video games, interact with them, and then you support their channel if you like the content that they're putting out. People do a number of different things, whether they're interesting or they're good at video games. Anyways, there's actually a few UFC fighters that are on it. Right off the top of my head, it's Rampage and Demetrius. And Rampage is hilarious because he always gets drunk. Have you seen any
calls people?
Yes.
I haven't seen it, but I heard about it.
Or calls Ariel. Ariel's like the funniest one. He's like, "Hey man, they want me to call you." It's so funny. And it's like 2 a.m. for
Ariel's
Ariel.
like, "Oh, there must be something good. There must be some reason he's calling me, some kind of insider information he's going to give me."
I don't think so because it's Rampage, and he sees it on his caller ID. He's like, "What's up, man?" And he's so it's pretty good. But then anyways, so Twitch has been pretty good for him, and that's I think how he's kind of getting some shine lately. He's also gotten into some trouble though because just some like legal dispute of stuff that he's said on it. So we'll see how that plays out.
If you're going to get drunk and have people ask you questions, you're going to have a much harder time not saying things that you're not supposed to. The hardest part I have to do with that is someone that obviously had substance abuse issues in the past. Getting really drunk on a public forum is probably not the best thing.
Maybe it is. Maybe that's how he gets monitored.
He can't leave his house, so he has to Twitch.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Let me find it because he is getting legal troubles, but so I'll find that later.
Yeah,
so the Demetrius Johnson, he's on, like you said, the day before he was playing UFC 2 and doing a beta test for it. So and then he gets a knock at the door. He's like, "Who is knocking on my door like the police?" And then he opens it, and the chat starts blowing up, being like, "USADA, USADA, USADA, USADA." And then he gets on and is like, "So I'm gonna have to shut this stream down. I'm gotta go give my blood and urine to USADA. They just showed up at my doorstep."
Well, and then he invites him to get on the stream. Was it weird? Did they sound like they were like 18, 19 years old to you?
They sounded young.
Yeah.
They sounded young because they were like, "Oh my gosh, is this your Twitch channel?" And he's like, "Yeah, man, you want to get on?" And he goes, No. But this is it.
Yeah, they probably can't get on. But yeah, they sounded.
Why couldn't? I mean,
they sounded really young. They didn't sound like they were 30, 40 years old. They sounded like they were 21, 22.
Well, did you hear what Connor said on how they actually do that? And I know it's different in the U.S. because it's USADA. It's the U.S., right? But WADA, which I think does the other ones, from what he told me, and this was part of the problem with the Jose Aldo thing, is he was saying, so when I got drug tested, they send somebody from Ireland to me that's a representative of it to send it back. And they do the exact same thing with Jose Aldo. And for nationalistic countries like that, I want to look into it. And if anybody knows that follows this, the podcast, if you've heard of that, I would really like to know the process. If they don't actually send representatives to do the testing, if they just get somebody that's the same nation, that's completely backwards for nationalistic countries like Brazil, Ireland.
Do you not remember this story about Jose Aldo and how backwards it was when they tried to test him?
When he dropped the piss, when they got the guy arrested?
Yeah, that one, when they got the guy arrested. But I think he was Brazilian. I don't think he was from the U.S.
So
And they still were. No, he was from the U.S.
because he had problems with his documentation. So that's what I'm confused about. Why Connor would say
no, he didn't have problems with his documentation. One of the guys in his gym was with the police, and they took his documentation and they sent it away to make sure that everything checked
really.
out. Yeah,
because I thought they hit him at the airport on the way in.
No, he had a police officer that trained in the gym with him that took all of his information and sent it away and then brought it back. Yeah, no, it's super sketch. And you know me, I'm one of those people that I believe if one person in your gym is using Anderson Silva, then there's a good chance that the rest of your gym is also using. Aldo said he would have an issue not using IVs. Like, it's super quick. It is what it is, and I'm glad that the USADA is getting involved, and I'm glad the UFC's fully backing them. And there's definitely still things that need to be cleared with how they do things and so on and so forth. But it's definitely great for this sport. I think it's going to be a lot like baseball, where there's a lot of people out there that are like, yeah, ping everybody. If they're using, then they need to get hit, and then they're going to get hit.
Well, the thing that I think we have the benefit on for MMA or the UFC, because not everybody else in the UFC, they set a precedent, but everybody else hasn't followed yet. We're not bogged down by this nonsense of history. I mean, I get it. I understand, but like the history's already tarnished. Like people have hit those home runs with steroids already, I mean, it doesn't matter. Like the UFC is a completely different beast. They have the opportunity to take care of it early. Let's do it and just make sure that everybody's clean. Especially in something like a contact sport, you cannot have, in my opinion, you just can't have steroids and punching people in the head and having it be okay.
Yep. Well, and one of the things they talked about as well is there's actually an article that said hopefully UFC fans don't have as short of memory as baseball fans, because baseball fans, after about 1 to 2 years, they couldn't care less who used steroids, and when they're calling them into the Hall of Fame, they say that they should have an asterisk next to their name, but no one really cares. When Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire and those guys go into the Hall of Fame, there's going to be people that are like, they shouldn't be in there because they use steroids. But at the same time, they're going to be let in, and it's not even going to matter. And so, I mean, it is what it is, and it shouldn't be. But our society as Americans are very short-sighted. It's not what have you done, it's what have you done for me lately. And, I mean, that's proven by Kobe Bryant and Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Tyson and all of these people that have done weird things in their career, whether they're, true or not. 5-6 years later, no one cares.
That they've done it? I mean,
Money Mayweather, the only people that speak out against Money Mayweather are a very few men and a lot of females. And they should. More people should speak out against, Floyd Mayweather. I don't like to watch Floyd Mayweather because of his abuse accusations. I don't like John Lennon because the accusations that he used to be, Yoko Ono. Like, I don't like Anthony Rumble Johnson based on the fact that, he's had accusations as well. There's a lot of things.
How can you just not like somebody off
not
an indictment,
like them,
though?
But at the same time, like, it is what it is. And you can respect them as an athlete and their athletic prowess, but you don't necessarily have to respect them as a person.
But I mean, for that, the other ones that you compared it to, they did it. Like, I mean, Anthony Johnson, you got to be wary of it, but I mean, he was never actually like convicted of anything, and it was pulled out.
We talk about the women that fighters fight are usually pretty nuts. My cousin who used to fight had some really weird girlfriends for a long period of time while he was fighting actively. Like, it does happen. But
and I mean,
if there's accusations, there's got to be something more there. Either that they're nuts or something else has happened.
It's just a bad situation.
But we're talking Travis Brown. We're talking Brett Rogers, who actually did it. Like, there's a lot of different things. But that's too serious of a subject. Let's keep it a little bit more lighthearted. And let's talk.
Well, one thing that I was going to say is on the Demetrius Johnson thing.
Oh, yeah.
How good it is.
Sorry to digress.
No, it's fine. How good it is for the sport. Not only he's such a relatable guy. Like, he's just playing video games.
He's
and it literally says on his Twitch page, I'm into video games. I've been into them since my mom got me a Nintendo when I was young. And the only reference that he even has that he's an MMA fighter is so to set up that I want to do this full time once I'm done with this. And he doesn't even mention that he's a champion. And as far as just being on the feed, apart from people getting to know him, ask him questions directly, unfiltered, I think that it is very good for the sport to see that live, like legitimately, there is testing that's going on. That's why I'm a big fan of like Sage Northcutt tweeting out, "Hey, this is the 5th time they've tested me since my last fight."
Luke. It was either Chris Weidman or Luke Rockhold also tweeted out like, "Hey, USADA's here." He didn't send any pictures or anything like that, but he definitely like let people know that they were at his house.
And I like that. I mean, it gives some legitimacy to the sport. You know, it's not just a blood sport. It's not just human cockfighting like everybody'd have you believe. Like, it is regulated. There is an art to it. It's legitimate. And these people are relatable. And that's what drew me to MMA, is how relatable these guys are. And that's why I don't really like the Reebok deal. I understand why it had to happen and everything. I kind of like the wild west of MMA in the UFC. Like, you gotta go look and find your own sponsor, something that maybe you felt strongly about, whether you're an advocate of the Second Amendment and you went and got guns, whatever it may be. You kind of had that.
I like the uniforms. I don't like the pay.
I don't like the uniforms either.
I don't. Wait, no. I don't like the uniforms that they have. I think that they should have a selection of different colors. I don't think it should just be black and white. I just like, you know, soccer jerseys soccer jerseys is only 3 alternatives, but there's at least 3 alternatives. But I mean, like, football jerseys have throwbacks. You know, they have different games and different things. Like college jersey, like, I don't think, and I got in this discussion on Twitter, I don't think you should have Dude Wipes and Condom Depot and Guns and Ammo and ridiculous sponsors like that just because they're willing. I mean, granted, they were paying $10,000 just to be allowed to be seen in the UFC, and then they were paying more than that to the actual fighters. I don't like the random sponsors, but I liked that they were actually... Why? Because I thought it was silly. I thought it was silly that there were so many different sponsors all over the shorts and all over everywhere. And it's interesting now to think at all the other UFC games where you could actually put sponsors all over the shorts of the fighters. And now that, you know, obviously it's changed, but
so I mean,
I like the uniforms. You're going to a job, you're doing your job, but I think that Reebok should be paying the fighters more and not paying UFC just to be a sponsor, but paying. That money should not have gone to the UFC. That money should have gone to the fighters that were using the shorts.
I mean, I don't know. And like I said, I understand as far as them wanting to move to the mainstream. It worked. It looked good for Reebok at the time. It looked good for the UFC. And this, let's be clear. The UFC is not. What is it? A 5-year contract with Reebok?
It might be.
5-year, $80 million. This wasn't a deal. A partnership with Reebok that they're trying to set up for the long term.
No.
This was a stepping stone. Reebok is a stepping stone.
And so if you were a company, would you want to be the next step? With all of the issues that they've had, would you want to be the next Reebok?
Well, yeah, because it's self-inflicted on Reebok. Nike, Adidas, You're not going to have that same issue. Pumas, you're not going to have the same issues with Reebok. You won't.
I guess that's true.
But I mean, look at the pay. Look at the pay.
Yeah.
How much did LeBron James or Kevin Durant? How much did he end up getting paid when Under Armour came to sponsor?
Millions.
They came over and was like $12 million more just to outbid Under Armour. You're going to get a different pay scale. Nike is going they're not going to pay him as much as LeBron. I understand that, but I'm just saying the pay scales would be different. That's number one.
No one's buying the $160 fight kits. So how do you convince a Nike to come in and buy out your contract or buy out after that if no one's buying the $160 fight kits?
Have a tiered system. Have it like that's what soccer does. Like they have, have different gear. First off, I don't know why people thought fight kits were going to be bought anyways. Like, why? You don't. If you go to the gym, do you want to look like? If you go to the gym and work out, would you like to go to the gym and have?
How many soccer jerseys do you have?
Now, Real 3, but any other ones? I think I have 1 Liverpool one.
All right, so that's the same. That honestly, to me, is the same concept. You're buying soccer jerseys. What's the difference between buying a fighter jersey? But a soccer jersey is $80.
This is the difference.
A Reebok jersey is like $160.
This is the difference. Where would you wear that jersey or the fight kit? Are we talking like the warm-ups or the actual spandex?
Oh no, we're not talking the spandex. We're talking the warm-ups. We're talking their walkout shirts and stuff like that. Just that I like them. I don't like the design. I remember working at a retail outlet store and seeing the walkout shirts for BJ Penn and seeing the walkout shirts for Vitor Belfort with the big old lion and being like, some of these are really, really cool. Mm-hmm. Like, not the American Fighter and not the Affliction and the Tap Out. I mean, and those are fine. But there were certain ones that were very basic. They didn't have all the floors and they didn't have the skulls. They were just very much basic T-shirts that no one would know if they didn't know BJ Penn or Vitor Belfort. They would have no idea what this shirt represented, and they were just really cool looking shirts. And I remember looking at buying those. And when the Fight Kits first came out, I was like, I would show my support to these fighters by wearing these Fight Kits, and then they weren't very good looking at all. And the second big issue was, along with the Fight Kits and how they looked, the second big issue was actually the fact that they were so expensive. They're more expensive than any other jersey you can find anywhere else, and it's Reebok.
Couple things. One, where do you wear Real jerseys, and do you wear full kits? You never wear full kits.
But
do you ever? Where do you wear? Okay, where do you wear Real jerseys?
I wear them a lot.
Where?
I wear them to work, but that's different because that's what my job allows for it.
And
I wear them to the game.
You would wear them to the game?
Yeah. Obviously, you wear them to the game.
You're not going to wear these fight kits typically to the gym. In the UFC event, are you going to want to... All of their fight kits look the exact same. And even let's say that they don't. Yeah. Would you want to go to an event, and maybe it's... I feel like it's different because if you're going to a Real game, you're all supporting the same team. You all wear the same jerseys. You're the same color. Mm-hmm. If you're going to a fight card and unless it's like a hometown guy, everybody's going to be like split. There's not a unity. There's not camaraderie there. And you're going to have like 10% wearing some of the same and others. But regardless, they all look the same anyways.
And they might not be fighting on that card because it's a different fighter.
It's not a good model. It's not.
I never thought about it like that. That's actually a solid way to think about it.
As opposed to, I like BJ Penn. I like the Hayabusa gear that he has come out, but I do not like the Randy Couture. This guy does like the Randy Couture. You get to represent that fighter directly. You're not representing Reebok a different way that they want to represent that fighter.
Yeah.
So, and for me, the Reeboks have always been shitty. And it's a bad idea. And like I said, I understand why they're doing it. It's a stepping stone. It's moving into the next tier. Nike would be different. They're about customizing. You're making.
Well, so why did they wait for Fox and sign so quick with Reebok? So when they were like TV deals, they're like, all right, cool. Our contract is up with Spike. We're going to wait. And everyone was like, I wonder where they're going to go. I wonder how this is going to work out. And they're like, we're waiting for the right deal. And then they made a deal with Fox. And Fox is one of the biggest broadcasters. CBS had Elite XC and all of the other afflictions and all of the other failed ones were on CBS. And the UFC could have gone to ABC, Fox, CBS, whatever one they wanted. And they actually held out for Fox. So why didn't they hold out for a different sponsor?
I don't know. I mean, I think that maybe they saw it as a sign of legitimacy, and they were seeing things moving already since the Fox deal. And they wanted to get that going.
How much would a soccer sponsor pay for a front logo? Life Advantage was like 120 million or less than that.
No, it's not even that much.
So 80 million seems really inexpensive to me.
Yeah, that's the thing. Do you know how much they're paying? They paid Kevin Durant. Let's look that up. It's I think an 8-year deal.
Yeah, no. So we're talking about this real quick. So when I think about, obviously, when we talk like Chevy paying, for Manchester United and those things, obviously they're gonna have to pay a lot more. But at the same time, even like being on a stadium, so like changing from the Delta Center to Energy Solutions to now Vivint Home Arena. I mean, those are in the $40 to $50 million, and those are for pro basketball teams, but that's just the name of the stadium. So $80 million to outfit all of the UFC and make
that's what I was blown away by.
That to me is incredibly inexpensive. I would bet that Bud Light's sponsorship just to be in the ring is more than $80 million.
So
Harley Davidson probably way more than that as well.
The Durant signed a few months remaining on his initial 7-year deal. He signed a $60 million endorsement deal. It was worth reported $265 to $285 million for one person.
And what LeBron James with Nikes was in the billions.
No, I think
for his life contract.
I think it's $500 million for a life.
Yeah, but I mean, it was $500 million just for that contract. Plus, they have to pay him for They still have to pay him for endorsements and different things like that.
Yeah. And those are both on Nike, just to be clear. Yeah. And those two are upwards to $1 billion, and the UFC gets $80 million. It seemed weird for me from the beginning, and that's why I just, from the onset, I don't like this. And for me, what I identified with is knowing these fighters, they get to represent themselves and they get to have the silly sponsors, but like I don't know, there was just a different level of like, I could, these wrestlers, they were guys that I went and watched. I don't know. For me, it was just, I identified with those guys more. It was much more interesting to have a Donald Cerrone, even though it wasn't politically correct. You got to see what kind of person he was if he's dropping the other F-bomb, right? And you don't, or even, what was the other one that I was just thinking of? Forrest Griffin's book that you would always quote to me. You get to know him.
Yep.
He's a guy writing a book.
More as ghostwriter, at least.
Well.
But he said, Chris Lieben was talking about his book, and he's like, everyone's got a ghostwriter.
But his personality's coming through on it, right? He's dictating it. And I connected with those guys differently, and that's why, to me, the Reebok is a representation of them just moving into other sports, which I like to watch. They're great, but I didn't connect with it in the same way that I did previously.
So how much do you think the Reebok deal had to do with Benson Henderson moving on to Bellator?
Everything. Absolutely everything. From Phil Davis to Benson Henderson to Matt Mitrione to Alistair Overeem, 100%. I think that factored in a large. It's not going to be everything, but it factors in largely to all of that.
So let's. How familiar are you with the contract? Did you read anything about it?
For Benson,
He
can fight 155, 170. He gets an automatic title shot, and he gets. Go ahead.
And he gets more money up front from Bellator. UFC, he made more money if he went back and fought for the belt. If he would have got back and won the belt again, he would have made hand over fist with the UFC. So it's interesting to me. Well, maybe not hand over fist, but as Dana White put it, he would have made a lot more money with us. But the stipulation was he would have had to have won the belt again. And
they're giving title fights out to really like one person right now, and they're like, he's in his weight class. Like, if Dana's like, he's going to make hand over fist if he fights for the belt, which belt?
Wins the belt.
Wins. Okay, but he still has to fight for the belt.
Yeah.
When is he going to fight for the belt, and which one? Is it going to be 170? Who's he going to get to fight at once? I mean, he did good at 170. Mm-hmm. He had one split decision, and he had one submission on Thatch. When is he going to get that title fight? When do you want to see him fight at Robbie Lawler?
Well, he's a Frankie Edgar. The chances of him actually getting that title fight are representative of when the UFC feels like he's deserving of that title fight.
Which is never in that division. Yeah. So is he going to go down to 155? Where is he in that line? We've got Pettis, who just got knocked out, and he's probably on par with Pettis because he lost two. Melendez, Alvarez.
Dos Anjos.
Conor McGregor now, who gets precedence over everybody. Mm-hmm. If he's going to make that upper echelon because he's a champion, I want to know when. Like, he would need a clear game plan from the UFC saying, if you win this fight, we'll factor it in. And I guarantee you that wasn't available. They have way too many other options, especially in that weight class. It's just not happening.
How big of a name do you think he is for Bellator?
The biggest.
Okay. More than Phil Davis?
Oh, yeah. He's way more exciting to watch than Phil Davis.
There's MMA Mayhem on Twitter who was telling me that it didn't matter because he wasn't that big of a draw, and his last couple fights weren't that good. Who in the world makes that claim? It was very frustrating to me that anyone, even though all of his fights go to decision, he's definitely one of the most technical fighters in the UFC, which maybe not most technical, but he's a draw, number one. And two, his fights are worth watching whether or not they go to decision or not.
And he's a guy that is going to come out and he's going to give it his all, and he will fight. He's one of the guys that will fight at any time. Mm. He showed that picking up the fight with Thatch, and he was kind of getting beat with Thatch. He kind of had some sticks, but then he sunk in that submission.
Well, because he's small at 170.
He's super small. Yeah. Thatch is a giant at 170. Yeah. He was like 6 inches taller than him, right?
Yeah, it was a noticeable difference from the get-go.
And he's a different looking guy, he's flexible, but he's also powerful. He's had good narratives with other fighters. He's always been in the mix with Anthony Pettis. He's lost twice. He's been in with Donald Cerrone. He's got history with it. So as far as being in the best division, he's got a narrative with probably the top 5 fighters that you could sell. So as far as it not being a draw and him not being have very exciting fights, strongly disagree with that. I would say he's up there with one of my top 5 favorite fighters. He is my favorite fighter in that division.
Your opinion, something I was thinking about today. Why do you think Dana White likes wholesome fighters other than Conor McGregor? He Sage Northcutt, Paige Van Zandt. I guess Ronda Rousey's not necessarily wholesome. Ben Henderson, but I mean, they let him go. But I mean, it seems like those like
fake John Jones.
Fake John Jones, that was one of them. Yeah, the original John Jones. TJ Dillashaw, but I mean, they
local guy too. He liked his story. It was a feel good story. Oh my gosh, can't believe I'm forgetting his name right now. Top local guy. Come here.
It's Sean O'Connell?
No. From Utah.
Steven Seiler?
He went to our school.
Ramsey? Oh, Court McGee.
Yeah, Court McGee after like the...
But he wasn't... He's wholesome now, but he was gritty.
But that's what he liked.
That's why I liked him to begin with.
That's what he liked.
Yeah.
He liked the feel-good story of recovering from drugs, right? Like that's the wholesome aspect that he liked. Why do I think that he likes it? Because everybody else likes it.
They don't. Those are the people that are
outside of MMA.
Crucified the fastest.
Outside of MMA. The people
coming out to my God is the awesome God and stuff like that.
They're only crucified when they lose, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, Dana White hangs out with freaking Timmy the Tooth or whatever his name is, and Matt Serra, who are two of the most foul people in the entire world. He hangs out with Mike Tyson, who's probably a pretty foul person. Yet the fighters that they get behind the fastest are like the most wholesome looking fighters.
Well, think about your friend.
The most wholesome looking fighters.
Think about it like this. Think about our friends. They're not necessarily the most wholesome. Like we're not overly concerned with that, right?
Yeah.
And then think about the fighters that you just said that you weren't really into. And most of that's with spousal abuse. I understand that, but it's an outside image that they just talked about this with hockey too. People don't like the fighting. People like a lot of scoring in hockey. So how did everybody like the All-Star game? They didn't like it. You know, it's people like the fighting. We like, but there's also a perception of the outside perception. Mm-hmm. There's a perception of the perception that everybody likes the wholesome. Yeah. And that's kind of why I was into MMA. You get raw. You get to disagree with people. You get raw dogged from behind.
Brian liked that one.
Yes.
No!
Yeah, it's totally
raw dogged.
Getting raw-rod.
Raw. But no, yeah.
But no, and I think that there's this. I had this discussion with Derek the other day that because he hates Cam Newton because Cam Newton was a pompous jerk when he got out of college, saying that he was gonna light it up. You need the heels in sport to a certain extent, but you need the Kevin Durant's or the Tim Tebow's and the heels. You need good versus evil. Like that's that's the thing I don't understand. Why they try to build one side up for so long. Just do both. Like you have Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva. Just put them both on and let them go.
The hardest part about human nature is interesting because you hate people until they succeed. So you can hate the heel or you can hate the good guy or whatever it is. And as soon as they become that champion, they're all of a sudden very beloved for a short period of time. Perfect is WWE, which a lot of these UFC guys watch as well.
Yeah.
You have John Cena, who came in as a bad guy and then changed to a good guy and then changed to a bad guy. Like you have Triple H, who did the same thing, who came in with Shawn Michaels. They're used to people flipping. That's why it doesn't matter with John Jones. Like he can go from a good guy to a bad guy back to just being a guy who's really good at his job. And the UFC kind of allows that more than anything. But I think it's because a lot of those WWE fans leak over into the UFC and they're used to that. They're used to someone being a good guy one day and then 2 years later being a bad guy and then a year later being back to a good guy. And as long as they succeed, Conor McGregor, who everyone hated, now he's a champion. Everyone's like, "Oh, Conor, he can talk." Cam Newton, everyone hated, and now he's going to win a Super Bowl. Anyway.
Well, and he's still people still hate him outside of Carolina. He stole the 12th man shirt or flag and threw it and stuff. But
he's doing so many good things. He's going to kids' birthdays that have cancer, and I like Cam Newton.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's like. And I can disassociate myself from those kind of things and just understand it for what it is. It's narrative in sport. It's all it is it's making sports more interesting for us, and that's what's entertaining about sports. I mean, it's very nice to go and just watch the technical aspects, but what really draws the money, what really draws fans to come out and see is a narrative. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm fine with them billing.
Who cares who's fighting as long as there's a narrative and a backstory to
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Cam Newton is a lot more interesting because he came out and said, it's like Babe Ruth pointing where he's going to hit his home run. That's way more interesting than somebody just coming out and hitting another home run.
Do you want the story of why this is happening, or do you want some zingers?
We want some zingers!
Simpsons reference.
But no, and that's the thing is I'm fine with them billing the good guys and things like that. It's good for the sport. It's a good thing for little kids to look up to if they want to become Sage Northcutt. There's a lot of people that want to grow up to be Ronda Rousey. I just hate the fakeness, and I feel like TJ Dillashaw was going this way. They talked about that on You're Welcome recently. Everybody knew with John Jones too. Mm-hmm. You know, it was like, how much longer until this comes out? But then you have the true ones, I think, like Benson Henderson, that really is like that. And, I mean, it's nice, the guy that goes and hugs his Korean mom and
ugly girlfriend.
Yeah, and praises God. Like, you need both in sports. That's why I don't understand why people just hate these quote-unquote bad guys. And it's like, you wouldn't love your good guys as much if they were all the good guys. Mm-hmm. You would, I mean, I don't know. These are real people. You know?
So another quick subject on the Bellator moves. So as far as I understand, Bellator drug testing is almost non-existent.
Okay.
Yeah. So once again, conversation I had on Twitter with people who know a little bit more than I do. Drug testing in Bellator is supposed to be very low. Do you think, based on that and Scott and his relationship with Scott Coker, that Alistair Overeem also signs a contract with Bellator?
Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to start moving. It's just, it makes more sense unless you have, if that's the true way that it works in the UFC is because I know each contract's different. They have 20-20 guys or 40-40 guys, which is you get $20,000 a fight regardless, and then a win gets you another $20,000, 40 for 40. They have a lot of different contracts like that, and I get that. So they probably have different structures for previous champions or up-and-coming champions that they feel like. But if that kind of contract's not in the picture for you, and you don't get your sponsorship money now, and you're not one of those 15 to 25 fight guys, yeah, and he's not. You know, how many has he had? Probably like 6 in the UFC?
Yeah,
7, 8
that,
maybe.
Yeah. And he's lost 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's won 2 of his last ones, but he lost almost 3 in a row. I mean, so but that was also right when USADA really kicked in. I mean, I like Alistair Overeem. I'd like to see him fight clean, and I would never say that to his face because he would crush my skull.
Like, he's not that good clean.
Yeah, good point. But
he lost.
Once again, it is what it is. All right, and one more fighter. Aljamain Sterling, you familiar with him?
I'm familiar. He's cut up.
Yeah, so he's actually got 3 straight wins. He's undefeated in the UFC. TKO over Hugo Viana, who's a Tough Brazil Season 1 guy. Takia Mizugaki and Johnny Eduardo. All 3 of them he beat. 2 submissions, 1 TKO. He's also in in talks with the UFC and Bellator and WSOF, according to MMA Latest News interview that I watched today. And he was talking about if he doesn't get paid enough or if you get injured, you can make more as a teacher. You get $45,000 a year as a teacher in New York, and he could take summers off, and he would be better off.
We saw Matt Mitrione's comment, right? Where he was like, I mean, you have to understand as a fighter, like you are taking a certain amount of risk with your health, and the contract just didn't make sense to me. The contract just didn't make sense to me to sign for more fights with the UFC, so I need to either go look elsewhere. The other thing that I have to weigh is that my degree that I got for playing football, it gets less and less useful the longer that I am out of college without a job. So I might need to be that 5 to 9 guy now. Or, 9 to 5, long hours.
He's probably going to get a security job after, so, I mean, it makes sense.
And he was like, my degree is just not that beneficial. I might have to become a 9 to 5 guy and make more money that way. It's a guaranteed check.
But that's why you look at those fighters that are getting on Twitch and doing their own podcasts and doing their own marketing. I mean, that's a very brilliant way to make sure that you have something after Chael Sonnen, Brian Stan, even Brendan Schaub. Like, those guys are making sure they have something lined up.
They kind of had to figure it out after. Brendan Schaub, like, it kind of just started working out because he was friends with Joe Rogan,
But that's good. They're putting those out on UFC on Fox,
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's basically a Fox announcer without being a Fox announcer, and some of those get pretty foul, and UFC on Fox is still putting them out.
With the fighter and the kid?
Uh-huh.
Brian Callen's hilarious, as you can remember from last week. You'll probably hear it more. I think it's hilarious.
So let's talk the next card that's coming up. I'm going to read you fights. You tell me who wins.
Okay.
We'll do the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. You ready?
Go.
Josh Berkman, KJ Nunes. Strike Force fight.
I'm going to go with Nunes.
And how's he win it? KO second.
Yeah, I feel like it's got to be KO.
Berkman's our Utah guy, though, so I hope he wins.
I know. And he's the people's warrior.
He hasn't looked good since WSFO days. He has one fight I think he won in the UFC, and that's why he's
gritty, man.
He is gritty.
He won his last one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to go with KJ.
And it looked like he was losing. All right. Joseph Benavidez versus Zach Makovsky.
Benavidez.
That's a pretty easy one.
Yeah, that's...
OSP versus Rafael Cavalcante. 12-6, Rafael. 18-7. I thought OSP had a better record. He's lost 7 fights.
Yeah, I mean that could have come before the UFC, right? Because he did a lot before. His reach is 80 and Cavalcante's is 0.
Looks like they need to update their numbers.
Yeah, because they both don't have legs either, per this.
OSP's pretty rough.
Yeah, I feel like
he's got the better losses. OSP definitely has the better losses.
Cavalcante's won. Do you know how many fights by TKO per this? 100% of his fights.
So he's 12 fights in. He's won all by knockout.
Yeah, how's OSP lost?
He lost to Ryan Bader by decision. Most of his fights that he lost are by decision. I think he might. Let's click on it right here. He's got one loss by KO and 1 by submission, 5 by decision. So if he's gonna lose, he got choked out by Glover Teixeira. Oh, he got knocked out by both Hua and Patrick. He knocked out Hua and he knocked out Patrick Cummins. He lost to Musasi by decision. And as the KO loss came back in the TCC days, Top Combat. So his last loss, other than Ryan Bader, was to Glover Teixeira. And the only reason he lost to Ryan Bader is because Ryan Bader ended up wrestling him the entire time.
I go OSP on that one. It looks like Cavalcante... I mean, obviously, he can put people to sleep.
Yeah.
Gonna go OSP on that one.
So your favorite one of the night, Roy Nelson versus Jared Rushholt, or Roseholt as I always call him, which is not the correct pronunciation of his name. Rushholt. He's
got America inside. I hate heavyweight fights, man. I always pick heavyweights wrong.
Well, I hate to tell you, Roy Nelson's not going to get knocked out.
I don't know, man. Like, you can't take that kind of damage forever. You can't.
You can't. He has.
But you can't forever. Has. You cannot.
I got Roy Nelson by knockout.
Nah.
Or he taps him out because his BJJ is better.
But he doesn't ever do it. He doesn't
He
doesn't even pretend.
Ultimate Fighter, he did.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
Forever.
Yeah.
But he did it when
I understand that he's high level. I get it. But he doesn't use it.
So who wins?
I'm going to go with the other guy. I'm going to go with Jared. He's got America inside.
He's got.
I saw his last fight and I didn't love it. I mean, he won, but like, I don't know. He's gonna come in with a game plan and just play slow against Nelson, and I just feel like he's gonna go points.
I mean, he's coming in off of
3
wins over. I mean, he beat Stefan Struve, but that's the only name he's got on his list there. And of course, the main title, or the main card. Or the main fight of the night, Johnny Hendricks versus Stephen Thompson.
Hendricks has a new nutrients coach, and he's been trying to stick to like a better game plan, keeping his weight down early so cuts aren't as bad for him, staying healthy. I don't know if he loses strength. But
Did you see the pictures on social media of him?
Mm-mm.
He looks small and he looks ripped.
Does he?
Mm-hmm.
I did not, but I saw just his plan. He's working with, who's the nutrients guy that everybody loves?
Dolce.
He's working with Dolce. I feel like this is kind of going to be kind of springboard him into his next title run. I think he's gonna pull this one out.
How does he win?
Knockout.
I don't think he's going to knock Stephen Thompson out. I think he's going to wrestle him, and I think he's going to win by decision. If he steps to the wrong side of Stephen Thompson's only got 1 loss. And I guarantee you that's by decision to a wrestler. Let's look at it. But his head kicks and his striking, GSP said he's one of the best strikers that he has ever seen. His only loss was to Matt Brown by decision. He hasn't fought the who's who or the gauntlet, but I mean, he beat Patrick Cote, Jake Ellenberger, Robert Whittaker, who was undefeated at the time. I mean, he's only lost to Matt Brown, who's number 5 in the division. So if he can stay off of his back, he can land. He's just
Did
as
Matt
likely
Brown
to
wrestle
land.
him?
No. Yes. Actually, yes, he did. Yes, he did. By decision, Matt Brown either knocks somebody out or he's going to wrestle him.
I've never seen Matt Brown wrestle. I've only seen him strike.
Watch the highlights of this fight.
I will do that.
And that's the only loss he's got. And so he's got just as much of a chance to head kick Johnny Hendricks as Johnny Hendricks does to knock him out.
I'm not saying he knocks him out necessarily standing.
Hendricks beats him by decision. Oh, I mean, he could take him down and ground and pound him. Good point.
And I still think that he can. I mean, Lyoto Machida has been knocked out too. You know, it's like he can be knocked out. Has he yet? No. So I mean, it's probably not gonna happen on the feet. But but he was supposed to have high level jiu-jitsu too, though. That's what they were saying. He's kind of the next. I mean, before they were billing this as he's the next generation of fighter where he's good on the feet and the ground. But
Josh Thompson? No, apparently what they did is
Stephen Thompson.
Oh, Stephen Thompson. Apparently what they did his entire camp was just put him on his back and make him wrestle because he's already had all the other striking.
Just don't believe in karate.
Brendan Schaub said when he went in to train with them, they shut down the gym because they didn't want people to see how bad he was beating up everybody in their gym.
I don't believe in karate.
If I learned anything from the Karate Kid, you can do it with one leg.
He's going to need 2.
Is there any other pertinent subjects that we missed?
No, we're good. We are good.
Well, for those
Paul's
listening.
birthday. Happy birthday,
Yeah, happy
Paul.
birthday, Paul. From the Poor Sport Report.
We love you.
We love you lots. He also lets us use his podcast stuff. We love him for that. Remember to subscribe here on iTunes, as well as follow us on Twitter at OneSpeedMMA. This is at Flying Smitty and at capital W_24, who needs a much easier name.
I don't care if you follow me or not. Just follow one speed MMA.
One Speed
I don't
MMA.
care if you follow me.
Remember, don't go 30%. Always go one speed.